Yesterday's News.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news of the day through the papers of yesterday. Here we are in a new year, 2025, can you believe it? And I thought, what better than perhaps to look back 100 years to 1925, the early part of such, or the end of 2024 even. We find, for example, in the Alman Examiner in October of 2024, looking forward to the end of the year, the Onken Fur and Feather Society, at a meeting of the Onken Fur, Feather, Farm and Garden Produce Society held on Wednesday, it was decided to hold the annual show, as usual, on New Year's Day, January the 1st, 1925. This was at Derby Castle and included poultry, pigeons, cage birds, rabbits, cats, ferrets, etc. Also, farm and garden produce schedules will be made ready in due course and posted to all of last year's exhibitors. Hard to believe a flower, produce and fur and feather show on New Year's Day in the heart of Douglas, but it was quite big business back in the day. Friday, December the 19th in 1924, this was in the Ramsey Chronicle. The railways doing good business, of course, back in the day. The Manx Electric Railway, Christmas and New Year's special timetable. The ordinary advertised service will operate on the dates not indicated below. Otherwise, a fairly extensive service, it would have to say. On Christmas Eve, if you're heading from Douglas to Ramsey, you could go at 8:30am, 10am, 12am, 2:30pm, 3:45pm, with a capital A by it, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 9:30 and 11pm. The A, we are told, is liable to delay awaiting the arrival of boat passengers and Ramsey mails. On Christmas Day, there was a service from Douglas to Ramsey at 7am, 2:45pm and 7:15 in the evening. And on New Year's Day itself, January the 1st, 1925, you could head out from Douglas to Ramsey on the MER at 8:30, 10, midday, 2:45, 3:45, 4:30, 6:30pm, 9:30 or 11 o'clock at night, with similar services, of course, heading from Ramsey back to Douglas. I don't know whether we get the same sort of service these days. I suspect not, probably. Meanwhile, the railway, the steam railway rather than the MER, New Year's arrangements, Thursday the 31st of December. On this day, the full Saturday train service will operate on all lines. The last trains will leave Douglas for Peel, Ramsey and Port Erin at 9pm. Market fares as on Saturdays. The Thursday half-holiday fares will not operate this day. And on New Year's Day, the train service will be the ordinary Saturday service, excepting the 9:30pm train Ramsey to Ballaugh and the 9:55pm train Ballaugh to Ramsey, which will not run. We turn to the Ramsey Chronicle at the very beginning of the new year of 1925, January the 2nd, and a fairly heavy piece under church notes, perhaps reflecting the worries of the times, as indeed 100 years later we have different worries, but still worries exist. The piece starts, once again has a Christmas come and gone. Of all those who have taken some part in the observance of the time, what proportion, one wonders, have learned or cared to learn the great lesson of the feast? For so many, Christmas has no connection with Christ. We do not mean Jews, Turks, infidels, or even heretics. We mean the average citizen of this once Christian land. What does the average man think of when he thinks of Christmas? Look in the shop windows and note these so-called Christmas cards. Christmas with 2 S's, I note. It is not easy to find a real Christ Mass card amongst them. Cats and kittens there are in quantity, but what have they got to do with Christmas is difficult to say. Holly and mistletoe, roast beef and turkey, snow, distant church towers, bells and verse of appalling barrenness and fatuity. All these are to be found. But out of hundreds of cards which we inspected, only some half-dozen or so bore any direct reference to the great event which made the festival and apart from which there is no basis for a Christian festival at all, viz., the birth of Jesus Christ. To be fair, I think there's always been a midwinter festival round about the end of December, but we'll leave that for another day. From the evidence of the cards and the further evidence of the newspapers and one's own observation, although we don't know who the person is, it is unhappily plain that a large number of our people have no idea of Christmas as a Christian festival at all. I think people might well say the same 100 years later. It's to them a sort of extended bank holiday. It is a time of merely pagan merrymaking. Their real text for the day is not "Today is born a Saviour," but "Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die." We have animadverted upon this before. That matters not. The position is serious, not merely for what it is, but its possible and logical developments. At the moment, numbers of our people are just pagans at Christmas. But in Russia, we see a step farther on the downward road from Christ. There, the blood-stained little group of Bolsheviks, which controls by a tyranny 10,000 times more dreadful than any tyranny done in the name of the murdered Tsar, the dumb mass of the good, decent Russian people, is determined to root out Christianity altogether. They will not succeed. Already there are signs of a Christian determination which will break the Bolshevik not by force but by suffering. But as far as force and the teaching of atheism in the schools can wipe out Christianity, the Bolsheviks will try to wipe it out. If they can do this with even a considerable amount of success in Russia, where the people are all Catholics, what will they do if they ever get a chance to use their appalling methods in England, where at Christmas one finds a great mass of our people practically pagan? Let all people who account themselves, the article goes on, disciples of Christ, weigh this very carefully as they look forward into the blank unknown of the new civil year of 1925. It will not suffice any longer that Christian people in England shall go on in a fool's paradise, believing that all will be well, and that they need to do nothing to ensure that it shall be well. They must make their faith positive and unmistakable, as the early disciples of Jesus did. And one way to do this, although it may seem a small one, is that disciples of Jesus shall resolve never to buy these so-called Christmas cards, which have little or nothing to do with the feast of the incarnation of the Son of God. Of course, the solution of all this paganism is just the one Catholic faith. Against a united Christian people, all bound in the one church, all holding the same faith and vitalized by the same sacraments, nothing but sheer brute force can have any success. And even that will not succeed long, for the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And of the whole faith, there is no more item more important than that which is the foundation and truth of the whole creedal edifice, viz., the doctrine of the incarnation of the Son of God, born of the Virgin Mary, as on Christmas Day. A cheery little piece under church notes to start the new year of 1925. And indeed, I'm sure a lot of people would argue a lot of the same sort of lines these days, that the true meaning of Christmas and why we hold Christmas is lost for so many. Whether they're pagans or not, I wouldn't like to say. And quickly, a look at retail food prices in 1925. England and the Isle of Man are compared. Average price per pound unless otherwise stated, we are told. So, beef, for example, in 1914, British ribs in England, 10p. That was in 1914 July. By April of 1925, 1 shilling and 6. Meanwhile, in the Isle of Man, 1914 July, British ribs, beef ribs, 10p. By April of 1925, 1 shilling, 4.5p. Cheaper, you will notice, than in England. Flank, well, 6.5p in July of 1914 and 10p in April of 1925 in England. 7p in July of 1914 and 1 shilling and half a penny in April of 1925. So a little bit more expensive. If we look at something like bacon, that had gone up in Britain from 11.25 to 1 6 between 1914 and 1925. In the Isle of Man, it had gone from 1 shilling and 2p to 1 shilling and 5p. So slightly cheaper again, would you believe? Bread per £4 had gone from 5 3/4 in England in July of 1914 to 10 3/4 in April of 1925. The corresponding figures for the Isle of Man, 6p in 14 and 11.5 in 1925. And finally, potatoes per stone had risen from 9.5 in 1914 in Britain to 1 8, whilst in the Isle of Man, quite a bit cheaper. 3p they had been per stone in 1914, up to 1 shilling 5.5. Quite a few pennies cheaper than in Britain in April of 1925. A fascinating little piece of statistics for the 1st of April 1925 under retail food prices, the Isle of Man Examiner, Friday of May the 8th, 1925. I think the prices are a little higher now, and generally I think we pay more than in the UK or in England. We shall see what 2025 has to bring. I hope for you it is a peaceful and healthy year. Until next time, cheerio.
You're gonna be yesterday's news.